one of the biggest honors I've ever had in my life, so I'm super excited to have Kenny here, my brother, that I'm able to baptize today. And it's been really cool. This is our first time. But it's been really cool to see how God's been working in his life and our family's life just the last couple of years. Just to know that like 9 years ago, none of our family was followers of Christ, but then today all of us are. And we are super excited about that and what he's doing. So he came up to me the other night and he was just feeling really convicted and really just like God was working and just moving in his heart. And now he's just decided to just give his life completely over to Christ, and it's really cool to see what God can do in his life. So, Kenny, you got technical difficulty. Kenny, we got I baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You're reading this, man.
This morning, and this is Will's microphone. You can find Will's microphone over there.
Turn on.
Let me borrow it. Will, when's the last time you changed the battery this side? Okay, we always need a scapegoat. Your mind this morning. Isn't that what we have staff for? So I can make a scapegoat out of it? No, it's not. And I won't. And I never will. This is a correct the battery's dead. The green light just keeps going off.
We can still hear you.
How close are you to the front?
We're right here. I can even hear you, and I'm hard of hearing.
That's the first time anybody politely called me a loudmouth.
I would have called you a loudmouth.
I just meant it. But this is our lives need. Oh, we got the real one here, okay. Not that extra. Let me start with a story since we've gotten all sideways here this morning. So Faith and I were in separate locations with separate vehicles Friday night, and I said, honey, why don't you just meet me at the Mexican restaurant? She knows which one that is. And we'll celebrate. Her car had been in the shop all week. And they called about 5 o'clock and said, you can hurry, you can have it today. Being that, and man, you understand this, that you usually have to stand someplace for 10 or 15 minutes and wait for our mates. So I expect that. So I get to the restaurant, and I head on in, and it's kind of busy. And I get us a table, and I'm sitting there, and I finally, the waitress keeps coming, and I said, well, she'll be along here shortly, and I finally said, well, go ahead and bring us the drinks. And she still wasn't there, and I thought, well, let me call her, and I realized I'd left my phone in the car, so I ran back out to the car, and lo and behold, here she's coming across the parking lot, finally gets there. And I hadn't always been a pastor, so by now I'm a little, I'll say distraught. That's a kind way to say it. I'm a little, okay, I'm outdone. And so I just kind of tell her, real quick, we're headed in there together, and I just pretty much say, I've already got us a table. I wanted to say, I've been waiting here, but I just said, I have us a table. And she was kind of in front of me a little bit. And I said, it's back in that far back corner back there. And so she goes in, and she has befriended, you can't imagine this, but Faith has befriended the lady at the restaurant. So I see that lady standing over here, and I see Faith headed for her, and I said, okay, well, now we got to wait for this long ladies' conversation. So I head on back to, far in the back corner to the booth and the table. And I sit back down at the table, and I'm waiting, and she still doesn't come, and I kind of peek around the partition there, and I don't see her. I think, lady's coming again, so I said, let me just go ahead and order. I'll take a chance she'll have to eat what I give her this evening. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting there. And it's been so long that by now I have to go to the restroom. It's been that long. So I step out of the room there, and I start to the restroom, and there's, the booths here, and there's a partition right here. And I'm stepping down this hallway, and I look over that partition. And there is this little woman with a table full of food, and eating and enjoying herself. And of course, there's a lot of emotion that goes through you at that moment in time, as you can well. And I'm looking over here, and she looks really good there. It looks wonderful. She's having and I'm just standing there looking at her like, and she's looking at me like, what's your problem? So I grab that waitress real quick and say, cancel that order, here's an order over here, and we stop paying attention sometimes. We drift at this thing called life. We get confused sometimes. If you haven't figured out life's confusing, come have a conference with me. I can guarantee you that I can explain to you how confusing life is. I sometimes think, as a pastor, that I'd identify with a waitress. I think we have a lot in common. You go to a restaurant and you order your food, and hopefully it arrives on time. If it doesn't, we get a little outdone, don't we? We're hungry. This is about me. I've come here. I'm paying the bill. And I've come to be served. And somebody ought to be taking care of me. And that waitress will hopefully do a good job and put it all out there. But let's just say that the potatoes are not quite up to snuff. They're not quite warm enough. What's the first thing you do? Oh, she's been out there just talking to somebody. She left that thing sitting there someplace, and food's gotten cold. They should have brought it sooner. Or, this isn't right. And you know what's amazing about that is? That at that moment in time, we usually look at each other and we say things like, I ain't coming back here again. I came here to pay my good, but they can't get it right. If they really were on the ball, if they really cared about serving me, then this would have been right. And if she gets any of that wrong, her wrong, cook's wrong, whatever's wrong, we're ready to take the whole thing and flush it. There are moments in our lives when we have to reevaluate ourselves, when we have to look at where we're going, we have to determine where we want to go, who we want to be, and how we're going to get there. There are those moments when we get so caught up in the minutiae of things and the just doing of things and the normal, ordinary process of things that we can forget what the real thing is. I know y'all just wouldn't believe this about me, but sometimes I can get caught up in myself. My wife believes that. We're not looking for testimony this morning. I get that. There are times as a pastor I have to back up and I have to sit down and I have to say, what was I thinking? I'm not saying that today. But there are times when I may not get it right. There are times when I may not have figured it out. And there are moments in time when I have to go back to the drawing board, which is Christ. And I have to look Him in the face. And I have to get back in relationship with Him and stop weighing things and trusting my own opinion and get in His presence and determine that He's right and I'm wrong. And that He knows and I don't. That He cares and half the time I'm trying to care. Faith, Christianity, this life that God calls us to is a process. It does not come naturally for us. You understand that. We are living above the norm. That's why God just didn't die for us, but He gave Himself to us. The Spirit of the living Christ indwelling us. But that reminds us that if we will forego self and we will focus on Him and trust Him and look to Him, it sure makes this journey a lot better. This morning I want to share with you out of John chapter 2, as we understand and as we think about continually having to correct our thoughts, our processes, our desires, our destination. In John chapter 2, you have the first cleansing of the temple. Now, I didn't come here this morning to plat a whip and drive anybody out the door. But I may put you in time out for a minute. Jesus cleanses the temple at the beginning of His ministry. In John chapter 2, beginning in verse 13, it says, "Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem." Do you think Jesus was just visiting Jerusalem? No. Jesus is the creator of Jerusalem. Jesus has come to His creation. He is not a bystander. He is Lord of all, and He's demonstrating that now by what He does. That He is in charge. Not the religious people, not the Pharisees, not the Sanhedrin. He is Creator God, and He has come to His creation. And He is disturbed by that creation. It goes on to say, "And He found in the temple." Do you think Jesus was a guest in that temple? No, the temple existed because of Him. It was His. It pointed to Him. It represented Him. They had made it something different. They had determined that this would be good and this would be good. And they had taken that which was holy and they put their spin on it and made it worldly. Too many churches today put their spin on it. We forget what this is about. We forget who's called us to this. We forget who we actually serve. We actually forget who's in charge of this, who's created this. This is not our idea. You're looking at God's purpose. You're looking at God's plan. You're looking at God's idea. Therefore, we have to be people who search the heart of God. We look to Him and we trust Him and we submit our will to Him. Am I telling you that's an easy thing? As a pastor, it is absolutely not. I've got a lot of wonderful ideas, but they're probably my ideas. Who this belongs to has to be constantly in our minds and our understanding. That this is not about us. It's about the Lord our God. And in it, we need to reflect Him. We need to look to Him. He needs to be in charge of all this. Not the pastor, not the deacons, not the people. We play to an audience of one. This belongs to God. We operate in His kingdom, not ours. We seek His will and way. His will and way. And as we do that, we have the assurance of His presence and His power upon us and for us. I believe that you believe what I believe. We need that. We are dependent upon that. And that God, in His good grace, and in His good way, and in His good time, and His good power, will fill us and bless us and use us as His instrument in this place, in this world. We have to constantly remind ourselves of that. Why are we here? Let me shift gears and say what this is not. This is not about my selfish ambition. It is not about your selfish ambition. It is not about my personal gain or yours. It's not about political power. I have no desire, none, to be in charge of this. But God has placed me here. Could He have found somebody smarter and prettier? Yeah, I'm sure He could. Thought I'd get an amen on that. And He found in the temple those who sold oxen and sheep and doves and the money changers doing business. And when He had made a whip of cords, He drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen and poured out the changers' money and overturned the tables. And He said to those who sold doves, "Take these things away. Don't make my Father's house a house of merchandise." At the second cleansing, He said, "My house shall be called a house of prayer." What this is not about us being served. I didn't come here for you to serve me. I came here to serve you. Hopefully you didn't come in this building today to be served. There are no waitresses running up and down these aisles. Until we are willing to become doormats for God. And some people probably don't like that terminology. Until we are willing to be doormats for God. Until we are willing to put ourselves aside. Until we are willing to say, "God, I repent of wrong attitudes, of wrong actions, of wrong thinking. I repent of it because, God, I realize that this is yours. This is about you. This is about the kingdom. This is about people being lost. The sky is falling, but it is not falling in here. It's falling out there. So we do not let it fall in here. This is God's place of His power and His presence, and we incorporate that into our lives, and it motivates us, and it takes us outside the walls of this church, and we take that out to a lost world that's living in darkness. I dreamed last night that I'm in this building, and looking out the way, everything is darkness. And there's this huge, gigantic black cloud that is hovering over it as far as I can see. And you look at it and you think, how can I don't want to be under this cloud. I want to get out from under this. Where can I go? What can I do? Listen, folks, I didn't find my way out, by the way. Listen, folks, we are under a dark black cloud of this world. That's what it looks like. We are the only hope in that darkness. We are the light of the world. We are the heart of God. We are the hands of God. We are the feet of God. We are the voice of God to this world. They will not know Him apart from us. So we don't come and get caught up in stuff. We just had a vote. The actual vote was 54 to 20. If I was coming as your pastor, and you came back there and said, well, the prospective pastor, the vote was 54 to 20. I would have said, I'll call you, don't call me. Why? I have been here for 5 years. I have loved you unconditionally. I have stood with you in the death of your loved ones. I have walked with you in the halls of these hospitals. I have loved on you, been proud of you, and continue to be so. I have been here long enough that you should know who I am. I started to have Eddie sing that song this morning, If You Don't Know Me by Now. I am here for no other reason than to see Double Springs grow and go. I don't have ulterior motives. I don't do the little magic tricks of, we're doing this over here, but you look over here. I don't operate that way. What you see is what you get. I have come in here and I have cried over you and prayed over you and hopefully blessed your lives. And we have something as important as bringing on staff. And you will not give me the courtesy of coming and hear what I have to say. That's where we are. That's the lives we're living. And to go off completely uninformed, I don't get that. I don't understand that. I'm going to make this simple. I need some help. What you don't understand quite often is how much help that you need. Double Springs is in a great place. We are a great church. We have been together for these 5 years. And by the way, we're not going back to other years. We are moving forward. Some of you thought I was going to resign. I ain't going anyplace. I don't have permission to go anyplace. And I'm going to stay regardless of what comes down this aisle or what falls through these windows, because I believe God's hand is on Double Springs Baptist Church, and I want to be a part of what God does here. Eddie wants to be a part of what God does here.
Amen.
We're not interested in power. We've been trying to talk each other out and not leaving all week. I'm not going to let foolishness get started around here. It ain't going to happen. Not on my watch. We'll deal with whatever comes down our way. We will deal with it as the people of God. As I said before, I'm not plaiting a whip. I'm giving understanding. I need somebody who can come alongside of me, who has the giftedness that I do not have, and who can take up the mantle that I cannot take up, and walk with me on this journey as the church to bring blessing to the church, and bring hope and help to the church, and bring organization to the church. That's all this is about. That's the bottom line. Pastor, do you believe that? I believe it enough that I'm cutting my salary 2/3 to make it happen. That's how much I believe it. Nobody is taking over this church. Bottom line. I want us to be together. I want us to be on the same page. I want us to have the same understanding and the same heart. How do we get that? By staying close to each other. By listening to each other. If you're confused about what I'm saying, why are you confused? I had a special Sunday night service to answer those questions. I gave you a week. The next Sunday morning, I'm over here, and I've got a special session for anybody just individually who needs to say something, who needs to voice an opinion. I don't have any problem with opinions. I don't have any problem with reservations. I have a problem with everybody not willing to understand what's happening. That's not too much to ask. If we're going to stay on the same page, then let's talk about it. That sounds pretty reasonable, doesn't it? I want you to know that I'm for you. And I'm for Double Springs Baptist Church. You have never given me a raise in this church because I told my people, my deacons, my leaders, that my salary was frozen when I came here. Not only that, I'm trying to get you to understand my heart. And not only that, but it has decreased because I have decreased it. I have done things that would benefit you and not me. I am not here to benefit me. I'm here to be a blessing to this church so that this church can love God and love people and go outside the walls of this church and make a difference in God's kingdom. It really is about His kingdom. I don't have one. I'm not looking for one. We serve by the will of God and by the pleasure of Double Springs Baptist Church. Write that down. By the will of God and the pleasure of Double Springs Baptist Church. The only authority I exercise here is the authority that y'all allow me to exercise here. It's that way with anybody. Each one of us as a staff is expendable here. Those are the ground rules that we should be playing by, that we should understand, and that we should operate in. With everything in me, I want to see your life grow. I want to see. That's enough about what it is. What is it? It is about a group of people coming together and loving each other beyond their faults. It's about a group of people pulling together and believing that God is real enough and available enough to us and powerful enough that He can change our lives and He can change anybody else's life. That's what, this is not an experiment. This is a privilege. I consider it a privilege to stand before you on Sunday. I consider it a privilege to go with you to the hospital. I consider it a privilege to minister in your life, to hopefully encourage you to make it better, to lift you up. That's why I am here in this place to serve God and to serve you. By now, some of the things I have said to you have gone one of two ways, and I don't have to explain one of the two ways. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to engage. I need every one of you to engage in the life of this church. We do not come here to be served. We do not come through these doors and sit here in a pew and then critique what happens to determine if it blessed me or not, and then make some kind of assertion to somebody else. Well, it would have been better. I need you to engage. I need you to engage God, first of all. I need you to draw near to Jesus Christ. I need you to experience the presence and the power and the Spirit of the living God indwelling you, who comes in here with you. Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst? It doesn't matter how loud the music is one day, or what the song was sung, or what the temperature was, or what the color, or how somebody, well, they didn't even shake my hand. We've got to move forward. Those are old days. We don't live in those days anymore. Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst? For we are co-workers in God's service. You are God's field, you are God's building. This then is how you ought to regard us, as servants of Christ and as those entrusted with the mysteries God has revealed. Now it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. Now this is our boast. Our conscience testifies that we have conducted ourselves in the world, and especially in our relationships with you, with integrity and godly sincerity. We have done so relying not on worldly wisdom, but on God's grace. For we preach not ourselves, but we preach Christ as Lord, and ourselves as servants for Jesus Christ. Amen. Hear me, church. God is in the midst. God is doing something. We either join Him or we don't. If you can't, okay. I'm I'm sharing this with you today because I want to salvage. I want to salvage everything that we can salvage. Because I will never go back to old days. It's a new day. It's a good day. It's a different day. Man, I love to see this boy come out with his sandals on his feet. I'm not going to hide in some room downstairs and determine, should I wear a tie today or not? Those days are over. I'm done with all that stuff. I hope you're done with it. I want to be done with everything in my life except God is real and God is returning, and I've got an opportunity to serve Him right now at this moment in time. And I'm not going to waste it. I'm not going to throw it away on some emotion, some feeling. I'm not going to leave my wife sitting at the table by herself and say, well, that's the table you set. You sit there and enjoy it. I'm going over here and eat my own food. I think that's sometimes the way we think when we come in these doors. That we have all these options. We don't have these options. We are Christ's servants. Jesus finished with this. Then his disciples remembered that it was written, zeal for your house has eaten me up. I hope what's eating at you today is that God is real and that you have the same zeal for His house that He has. That you're willing to get in and let's go. That's the invitation. That's what our opportunities are. That's what the privilege is. We are continuing on. By the grace of God, and because I love everybody in this room, I'm going to slow down and back up just a hair. We still have we're not voting on anything else. We still have the same parameters to work in. We will not take advantage of all those parameters. Eddie's agreed I will just bring him on, not full-time yet. But he will help me out. I will not pay him everything we said we were going to pay him at this moment in time. Compromise is okay sometimes, folks. It's okay. If it brings us together, if it makes us cohesive, if it blesses other people's lives, I'm fine with that. On my part, I made it too complicated. And by the way, the executive pastor has been fired. Your pastor tried to get fancy. I thought it really sounded good. But you took it in a whole different direction. I'm giving Eddie a title of worship leader and associate pastor. Part-time, right now. Stay with us. I believe that God is going to use this. When I say what He's doing, let me just say, He'll do anything that I ask Him to do, and He won't do anything I don't want Him to do. But He's going to help me come alongside in our Acts ministry plan. I've heard your heart on that. I know there's some gaps in that. I know that it has to be, it's a great plan. But I need somebody who has administrative skills who can take care of the nuts and bolts of that. Who can bring it and present it, and that our deacon enablers can take that and run with it and work with those guys on how to take his area of ministry and to bring all these people into that ministry and then assign them what they're gifted to do. And regulate how that works, and it goes out. See, we're talking about blessing the church. And our usher and deacon ministry, usher and what's the other thing y'all guys do? Take up the offering. Greeters, thank you. And our greeter ministry, there's so much more that we should be encountering people in a much more positive. Now, we're a friendly church. We love people coming in. But there should so much more that should be done out in front of this church as people come in this church. And new Sunday school classes to be started. I need someone who can come alongside of me and concentrate on that instead of me being pulled from here to yonder all over the place. I cannot juggle all these balls. I am an imperfect human being. I just can't do it. It distresses me, and I've been distressed because I couldn't. And that's why I looked and I said, wait a minute, here's what I need. And then I looked around and I said, well, he's right here and he has all that. I've worked with Eddie for 5 years. We're joined at the hip. You might not know everything about going on in his life, but I do. What I'm asking you is, could we just trust our pastor? As you know my heart, as you've heard my voice, could you just trust me a little? Can we just test these waters? And here's the wonderful thing. If it doesn't work and you don't like it, we serve here by the will of God and by the pleasure of the church. You can change anything you want to change. It's the way it always been, it's the way it always will be. But I believe, just because there was misunderstanding, just because you're dim-witted pastor, put titles and long pages of stuff, instructions and all, I get that. So let's regroup, let's come back together. I've cleared the air this morning. Let's clear the air. Let's get back on track. And let's agree that, okay, we can do this. This is okay. This can work. And let's go from here. Father, we don't always know what you do. Forgive this ignorant pastor sometimes. Forgive my impetuousness and the way I do things for not communicating better. I repent of it and I apologize for it. I pray that you'll knit our hearts together even stronger because of it. And that we will come into this place and we will have our hearts prepared and we will engage in worship of a God who has given his very life, who has laid in the dirt and the dust and the blood for us. Remind us of whose we are. Remind us of who we are, that we are the church. We are children of the living God. Help us to always worship that way, to respond that way, and to live that way. These old natures, these old self, these old opinions are hard to overcome in our hearts and our lives. But you've called us to newness of life. You've called us to lay our lives down to take up Christ. Above all, may everything we do always bring glory to the Lord our God. Don't let us harm each other. Don't let us harm this world's vision of who you are. But help us to portray you by the lives we live and the words we say and the hearts that we have. Father, we love you. Help us to love you more. And God, we continue to pray for revival. I need it. We need it. Will you reject us? Will you not hear us? Will you not respond to us? We ask you to revive us, to renew yourself in us, to help us, and we call out and cry out to you. the Lord our God. In Jesus' name. Your heads are bowed and your eyes are still closed. Would you quietly stand where you are?